This morning I want to show you a little glimpse at something me and Jenny did when we first moved into this house 2 years ago. We are completely unapologetic bibliophiles. We love to collect books, both modern and antiquarian, and we like to pair them with our statues. So the fantasy section has dragons, and of course Jessica Rabbit stands guard over the more adult literature. When we got together, we knew we both loved books so much, and it was one of the things that drew us to each other, and we always said that when we got a big enough house, we would have a library. And this was what we did. We turned one of the rooms into a guest room / library, and we've now even included what we're calling Olivia's Corner, full of plushies and children's books, and some of these books even go into the history of our families. Our classics section is somewhat sparse, but that's because neither of us are actually that into classic literature, unfortunately. We have poetry, we have social study books, we even have the spinning wheel. I will tell more stories about this library one day, but just for now I want to show you what it is that Jenny and I love so much. After my last video about our private library, someone very kindly commented that if there is over 1,000 books, then it is officially a library. Now, I couldn't find anything online that was official or even official looking to define this, but it is nice to think that we do have an official library, as we do keep a regularly updated Excel spreadsheet of our collection. And at the last check, we had just over 1,700 books, with us hoping to reach 2,000 books by the end of this year. Now, part of this Excel spreadsheet does also include who we have borrowed books out for, so we can break the knees of anyone that has failed to return a book, but until then we thought we would share our little collection with you. The odd, the strange and the rare, but mostly the everyday books that we love so much, and we hope to do this as our little family of librarians. Jenny, of course, won the coin toss for our first book show, and the book she wanted to show was a book gifted to her by her grandfather. This book has a lot of sentimental value, and although it's probably not worth all that much, it is a classic of the Grimm's fairy tales, with gorgeous colour plates and a very nice inscription from her granddad. Now, as bibliophiles, this is normally not something we appreciate, but it is something that is very special to us. So, we love it. The story of Cuckoo Lane, or the Irish Hercules, is one of my personal favourites from Irish mythology, so imagine my surprise when I see this beautifully bound copy of Terence Gray's play, Cuckoo Lane the Gallic Drama, sat in a charity shop window. £20 for any book of this quality would be worth the money, but as we open the book we see it's so much more special than that. This copy is a first edition from 1925, and due to abilities at printing, rather than the images in the book being actually printed in the pages, they stitched in these black pages and attached photographs. And as we scroll through we find newspaper clippings from the production and the day of release, and we instantly realise that this copy was owned by a member of the cast, and we can confirm that because he only ever signed cast members. Both Jenny and myself grew up with reading and books as a central love of our childhoods, and we knew that this is how we wanted to raise Olivia as well. Books are the closest we will ever get to magic in the real world, being able to escape into someone else's imagination and see through their eyes. So I wanted to show you what I'm reading to Olivia. Now, the Foley copy is nice, but anyone who knows books will know that Foley copies just look nice. They're not particularly expensive, but the story is what's important. Anyone by now should recognise the moon runes and the map of the Lonely Mountain, of the journey of a particularly innocuous little halfling, his 13 dwarf companions, and a troublemaking wizard. Because what story doesn't start with a troublemaking wizard in a big hat? Although not particularly a rare copy, I was very happy to find out that this was a first edition copy of this Foley, as published in 1980, and it's very special to me as this was the first Lord of the Rings book that I ever read. It's the first thing I ever read by J.R.R. Tolkien. As a fantasy reader, it changed me to say that I didn't get into Tolkien until much later in life, but now I've found him, I've read the entirety of The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion as well as this. But The Hobbit is the one book that I can read over and over and over again, every time. Sometimes the story is so much more important than the message within, and sometimes the journey is so much more important than the destination. Thank you. The next book Jenny is about to show you is the funniest book we have ever read. The book was found in a converted church in Wales when we were with two of our friends, and when we read it in posh English accents, we knew we had to buy it. Sex Life in Marriage by Dr. Oliver Butterfield and Dr. Sophia Kliegman. That's right, this book was co-written by a woman, and it attempts to explain the sexual battlefield, as it quotes, for new relationships and new marriages. Published originally in the 1930s, you can imagine the kind of contents, though just to quote a few, is dealing with the maladjustment of homosexuality and bestiality, yes, it lumps them together, and more. I think we still have a long way to go. It is no secret that for Jenny and myself, our all-time favourite writer, and also what we both believe to be the greatest writer that ever lived, is Sir Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett wrote fantasy, but came at it at the view of someone with ingrained realism and a sarcastic, satirical view of politics and the modern world. We asked each other to pick one book to show in this video. So for Jenny, that book was of course her all-time favourite Discworld book, Witches Abroad. A mixture of high fantasy, low fantasy, and fairy tales that she can read over and over again. For myself, it will always be Pyramids, which is the first Discworld book that I ever read start to finish, and in fact the first book I ever read start to finish on my own. And I laughed so hard throughout, my dad had to tell me to stop reading and go to sleep, and because I stayed up until 5 AM reading on a school night, I had to call in sick to school. Now these are the books that we picked out. Why don't you please tell us what you would pick out? And always remember the name and mind how you go.
I want Olivia to read this one day. What Katie did made me fall back in love with reading and kind of made me believe in some sort of higher power just a tiny bit. There's a lovely sequence where Katie cannot read this great book before her in a dream and cries out for help, and a great kind face opens it for her and starts reading it out. And when she looks up, the voice of the face simply says, "Why did you not just ask?" There's also this very nice metaphor of love and pain as different teachers. There's a beautiful poem in it towards the end of chapter, St. Nicholas and St. Valentine's, and the very last part of it is so beautiful. So I will do my very best, not chide the clock nor call it slow, so when the teacher calls me up to see if I'm fit to go, I may to love's high class attain, and bid a sweet goodbye to pain.
I have just been told it only takes 1,000 books to be considered a library.
I did not expect to be doing another of these videos where I talk about our collection in general. I thought we'd be moving on to mine and Jenny's, and hopefully one day Olivia's book recommendations, as we give you our tour of our 1,783 books. At least that was the last check as of the 20th of June 2022. We are actually currently on the objective of making it to 2,000 books by the end of 2022. Now, before anyone asks why we hoard so many books, this is not a hoard. These are our to be read, I'll be reading, actively reading, borrowed out, and many more. This is our active private library that we want to share with all of you. So please, like, subscribe, follow, duet, stitch, whatever else you want to do on this wonderful little BookTok community. And why don't you come and join in the McKay Library? Bye.
This is not a particularly rare or indeed valuable fairy tale book, but it's probably my most beautiful one. You'd never know what it's hiding inside from the plain white front cover. It's absolutely a lesson in not judging by the cover, because the moment that you open it up, you find this. a stunning riot of colours. What I particularly like is that it was owned once by somebody who clearly loved it, because they filled it in with who the book belongs to. And as we do a flick through, look at that, every page is just illustrated beautifully. I do really love the Cinderella artwork. It's very French Renaissance, as is Beauty and the Beast, which matches up perfectly to their original culture. And Aladdin, on the other hand, is a lot more Chinese style, again very appropriate. And here is Hansel and Gretel in perfect Germanic art style. It's absolutely the most beautiful book I own.
With Pride Month coming to the end, I thought I would share my favourite queer fantasy trilogy, Herald Maid Trilogy by Mercedes Lackey. Now, supposedly, the main character Van of this trilogy was the first openly gay protagonist and hero of a fantasy series. I don't know how true that is just a cursory Google, but what I can tell you is these are some of the best fantasy novels I have ever read. The magic is both very strict and very flexible, mixed in with sword fighting and other combat, and fantastic social and political intrigue. Also, who doesn't love talking horses? The series is about the young man Van, who comes to terms with not only having magic, but also being gay in a world that does not accept that very well. If I had one criticism, the second book sort of ruins it a little, but as a series it is fantastic. I would heartily recommend. And with that, hope it's been a good Pride Month, and please like and subscribe for future videos. Okay, been meaning to do this one for a while, so thanks at Marichild. Where you go? My favourite book. Now, I'm a mood reader. It's a bit hard for me to choose a favourite book, especially from all these amazing fantasy novels that I have, but a book I will harp on about to anyone that will give me 2 seconds of time to chat is The Way of Shadows by Bren Weiss. In fact, the whole Night Angel trilogy, quadrology ever since the novelette came out, that follows Durzo's story, series. If you like fantasy, if you like LGBT themes, if you like gritty, dark fantasy, this is the series for you. This is amazing as a series. Heartily recommend.
What would you do if I broke into your house? I apparently made some mistake.
Before talking about the greatest comedian who ever lived, I would just like to say hello and welcome to all of our new friends and followers. It is lovely to see that there are now at least 109 of you as of recording. To say that Spike Milligan was the greatest comedian of all time is no short order. Without the work of Spike Milligan and his friends on The Goon Show, Harold Seacombe and the rest, we would not have such things as The Monty Python Show, The Muppet Show, Mitchell and Webb, or Fry and Laurie. Spike Milligan's comedic career began really in World War II when he was fighting for the British and the Allies, where he penned many letters not just to his commanding officer but also critical letters to Hitler personally. Spike Milligan was such a known troublemaker that Prince Philip wrote to him himself, banning him from attending his friend's knighthood. Spike Milligan promptly turned up and was frog-marched out while the royal family were all laughing. He had regular correspondences with Prince Charles and Prince Philip about certain gaslighting in London, which was a shame that they had to remove a classic piece. The books we have in front of me are unpublished letters and manuscripts, as well as anecdotes from his diaries with him dealing with his long-term depression, his little doodles, and how he coped with life in general. His preferred method of coping was to be the biggest troublemaker Britain has ever seen. I would love to read something like this, but quite frankly there are too many to choose. I would recommend heartily. And like and subscribe.
With it being Pride Month, I thought I'd get down one of my more modern and up-to-date thinking books from the adult section. I really hope that the TikTok algorithm doesn't just take this one down immediately. I'm scared to even read out the title, but you all saw it there. It's written by two best friends, and you can absolutely tell every single chapter is full of this lovely, joyful positivity. It feels like listening in or even being part of a conversation between two best friends just chatting about guy problems. It's also got some of the funniest chapter titles that you will ever find. I also really like the artwork at the start of each chapter, very old Playboy style, I think. And, yeah, well worth the price if you can find it anywhere, people. Happy Pride! Yay!
This channel was never meant to be political, but I feel with news coming out of America, every channel deserves one political video. Courtesans by Katie Hickman. Now, if you saw that title and thought that this was going to be some raunchy debacle of debutantes across Europe during the Elizabethan period, or a story about women of ill repute, then you are what is wrong with the world. Sadly though, it is pencil marked. I have literally never picked up a book that details more female empowerment and the power that women possess more than this book. In these pages, Katie Hickman details the life and story of 5 women of Renaissance, Elizabethan, Victorian and the American courts, who you will have never heard of, primarily because of their intelligence, beauty, virtue and power were able to turn England, America, Germany, France and many other countries on their heads, as men and even some women vied for their hands, their looks, even a small moment of their time. One of the women in this book, after getting in debt to the French banks and being sold to the French government as a spy for England, promptly spied on England while also double spying on France for the English government. She took an Italian spy lover. They eloped to America, where he was promptly found with a silver knife between his shoulder blades. Keep fighting.
So it's generally speaking my job to keep track of our library inventory and find rough valuations for ones that are more interesting, signed and first editions, that sort of thing. This one, though, has me a bit stumped. It's a very pretty copy of the Arabian Nights, and the front illustration here is absolutely stunning. I mean, look at all that intricate detailing. And the strange thing is you can't see it until you pull back. It's really beautiful. But here's the thing, it's definitely been signed, and a little further in we'll see it's got a confirmation of who signed it, but it's the illustrator. Not only that, but I've got reason to believe it's the illustrator's personal copy, because we found this sheet of notepaper tucked inside, which appears to be the same handwriting as the illustrator's signature. So I don't know if this is the illustrator's personal copy or what, to be honest. Unfortunately, the handwriting is so small I can't actually read it on this piece of notepaper to track it down. It's an absolutely beautiful copy, as you can see. Original translation as well, and look at this gorgeous colour plate. Unfortunately there aren't any more colour plates within it, but it is very intricate. It's got notes on the translations and why. It's a very, very beautiful copy, but I, for the life of me, can't find a valuation on it, because you never get anything signed by the illustrator. It's one of our more interesting ones that has just got a question mark next to it in the inventory. Okay, let's see what we get. Okay, 1 second then. Okay, this one actually took me a few minutes because I'm genuinely working my way through quite a lot of the fantasy shelf. This is the general knowledge and research section. This is the fairy tales bit, which I have read extensively and keep rereading. Kids section, some of these are my books from my childhood. Manga section, yep, most of those are mine. Sci-fi, I'm the only one who reads sci-fi. Classics, I am intending to work my way through them. But I found something I will never read. Cal's rom-com books. Because I'm really not into rom-coms even as films, and especially not as books. Even the ones that are actually pretty good. Sorry, love.
I feel personally attacked. It is no secret that I'm not overly interested in poetry, but even I was moved when I found this sitting on a shelf, practically half destroyed, in a second-hand bookshop. If you don't already know who Robert Burns is, then I think you may have literally been living under a rock, the foremost and absolute poet of Scotland. This book was published sometime in the 1860s. It has the typical marbling of the era, but sadly, whoever had this before we got hold of it did not take care of it. This is a sad thing about when you collect books, and you particularly go looking for books in second-hand shops, antique shops, and even charity shops. A beautiful piece of history dating over 100 years can have some truly awful damage on it. But if you are collecting as a passion and not for money, then even this damage will be minimal to a collector. You see, the illustrated Robert Burns isn't just about him and his poetry, it's also about his family, his home life, and all the things that went into making Scotland's premier poet. I was just very glad that it still has all the tissue paper to protect the beautiful artwork, and it doesn't have any pencil marks.
BookTok, I got a question for you. What is a book that caused you severe emotional distress that was not named Song of Achilles?
Okay, emotional stress book. 3, 2, 1, break.
Okay, so I'm going for The Shepherd's Crown. If you're a Ted Pratchett fan, you know why. I've still not read any further than page 38 in this particular edition, because I get that far and then I can't keep going. Go.
Okay, so I'm going to do a bit of a sidewinder because this isn't emotional damage in the sense of like I feel bad, but this was confusing. Aleister Crowley's The Drug and Other Stories. Now, if you don't know who Aleister Crowley was, he was a 1900 occultist who basically took a load of drugs, and it was theorised he may have actually had magic. So, you know, that's a bit of an interesting story to read, and the story of the drug is a first-hand account of someone having taken drugs. And you know what? I can't remember a single thing about it. All I know is that the emotional anxiety and distress, it basically... Okay, parenting comes first, but you know what? This story made it feel like I was on drugs. So, give it a try if you want to feel genuinely emotionally uncomfortable. Bye. This morning I want to show you a little glimpse at something me and Jenny did when we first moved into this house 2 years ago. We are completely unapologetic bibliophiles. We love to collect books, both modern and antiquarian, and we like to pair them with our statues. So the fantasy section has dragons, and of course Jessica Rabbit stands guard over the more adult literature. When we got together, we knew we both loved books so much, and it was one of the things that drew us to each other, and we always said that when we got a big enough house, we would have a library. And this was what we did. We turned one of the rooms into a guest room / library, and we've now even included what we're calling Olivia's Corner, full of plushies and children's books, and some of these books even go into the history of our families. Our classics section is somewhat sparse, but that's because neither of us are actually that into classic literature, unfortunately. We have poetry, we have social study books, we even have the spinning wheel. I will tell more stories about this library one day, but just for now I want to show you what it is that Jenny and I love so much.